Thank you for your enthusiastic response to Restoring Health Holistically. I would just like to make clear that I am not a medical practitioner. In order to heal my own illness over the past 17 years, I've become a holistic health author, educator, and an advocate. But this does not provide the depth of knowledge that's needed to treat illnesses. I research any illness I have, and then I make an appointment with a holistically trained practitioner to discuss a treatment plan. And this is a collaboration between you and your doctor. Western medicine primarily treats symptoms with drugs forever. I prefer to seek practitioners who are trained to treat the causes of illness so that I will get well. The titles that I look for are naturopathic doctor, or ND, functional MDs, orthomolecular doctors, chiropractic neurologists, and certified energy medicine practitioners. These TV shows are intended to raise consumer awareness of holistic treatments and explain how they work so that you can make informed decisions and find a practitioner to work with and get well. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to Ask Gracelyn. I'm really looking forward to answering more of your questions, but first I'd like to introduce the woman who has been receiving them and who runs my Facebook page, Lois, Arias. Welcome.
Hello, Gracelyn.
What are some of the things we're going to be covering this evening?
We've got a very wide array of questions, from acupuncture to circumcision.
Wow.
Veterinarian questions.
Okay.
So we have an interesting show.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. Since we have some, I know that we have quite a few that are still asking questions about holistic medicine in general. What I'd like to do is cover the principles of holistic medicine first before we get into it again. We mentioned many of these last week, but I'd just like to do a little bit of a review, and then we'll go on with more of the holistic health questions. The principles of holistic healing is, first, do no harm. And that's the same as it is for conventional medical MDs. Second is, holistic medicine treats the causes of disease by identifying, and then identifies and removes them to enable the body to do its own thing, which is heal naturally. The third is to teach the principles of healthy living and preventative medicine by sharing the knowledge and encouraging personal responsibility. You know, nobody can do this for you. They can tell you what to do, but you have to do the doing. So it's personal responsibility is really important. And fourth is to heal the whole person through individualized treatment, understanding the unique physical, mental, emotional, genetic, and environmental and social factors that are involved in illness. And fifth is to emphasize prevention. Partnering with a patient to assess risk factors and recommend appropriate interventions, again, to enable the body's self-healing processes.
What conditions can holistic medicine treat, and what does it encompass?
It can treat almost any ailment that conventional medicine treats, except the approach and the treatments will be quite different. Holistic practitioners gather information from the patient about their whole body, and this is all the symptoms anywhere. If it's a mental illness, they don't just ask about your mental symptoms. They ask about your gut and about your immune system and all of the other systems too, because when you're trying to identify underlying causes, this whole body scan of symptoms gives the practitioner clues as to which systems might be malfunctioning or not working well or interacting with something else. So it gives them clues as to what the causes might be. And natural solutions are, when compared to conventional treatments, are usually much cheaper, except that they're often not covered by insurance. So while they're a lot cheaper, you still have to pay for many of them out of pocket, and that makes it difficult for some people. The other good thing is that they have almost no negative side effects. So they're really a lot safer than the drugs, which have multiple side effects. And when you're taking 10 drugs instead of one, nobody knows how those are interacting with each other.
I was going to say, with the supplements, none of them have a bad interaction.
No, for the most part not. There are just a few things, like fish oil is the number one, not vitamin and mineral, but number one natural supplement that's used in the United States by people. The only contraindication with that is it slightly thins the blood. So if people are on blood thinners, they need to be careful and have their doctors monitor it when they're taking the fish oils, because fish oils are anti-inflammatories. They have a lot of really health benefits that have been proven by over 20,000 different studies. So there's no doubt that we need these essential fish oils in our body and in our diet. But for some people, if they're taking certain drugs, they need to be careful and have those drug levels monitored when they're on the fish oil, so that that's not over thinning the blood. This lack of side effects may be part of the reason why 33% of U.S. adults and 11% of children use complementary and alternative treatments in 2012. So, and even surgery, which can often be avoided. A friend of mine had, I'll just give one example. A friend of mine tore his rotator cuff, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, you need surgery. And he said, well, how long will it take for me to recover following the surgery? And the doctor said, well, roughly 6 months. And this friend who was older said, I don't have that many 6 months left. I don't want to do this. And so the doctor said, well, you can go to a physical therapist and try exercises. So he did. He made one appointment with a physical therapist who gave him exercises. And he went home and he did them every day. It took him about 40 minutes to go through the whole thing daily. And within 6 weeks, his shoulder was healed. He didn't need surgery, and he didn't need to go through the 6 months. So lots of times you need to be careful not to let people rush you into surgery. Surgeons like to do surgery, and that's okay. We want them for when we're in a car accident and we have major problems that need to be stopped right now. So I'm not bad-mouthing them. I am saying there is a time when surgery is appropriate and very necessary, but many things can be healed more simply if you give it a chance or take an alternative method. So I think that answers that.
Yes, it does. Does holistic medicine heal on levels other than the physical?
Yes. The term holistic includes a variety of energy healing therapies. And I'm just going to look at this list so I don't leave any out. But acupuncture, hands-on healing, massage and Reiki, light therapy, sound and frequency healing are commonly considered holistic energy medicines. Many of these are based on knowledge that was not once available, say 20 or 30 years ago, such as the fine meridians that have been mapped now in the human body, but for years they were so tiny nobody could, the scans at that time couldn't pick them up. And so they thought that this was a bunch of hoo-ha, but they really do exist, and that is the network that acupuncturists, practitioners have used for centuries. So another example of the invisible energy transfers that bring healing through Reiki and hands-on healing is that they're based on science, but it's a science most of us don't know much about, called quantum physics. But quantum physics also covers how wireless printers work. So these waves going through the air can carry healing energy as well as the energy to start your printer.
I've experienced Reiki, and I can feel it when it's being done.
Yes.
A warmth.
Yes. And when I was doing hands-on healing, I was laying on a treatment bed, and I had my eyes closed, and behind my eyes I could see colors flashing. And so I knew something was going on, and I would occasionally feel sensations, mild, in my body. So I knew something was happening. I just didn't know what until later. So next.
How do I know if healing for my condition is possible?
Well, the simplest way is to ask a practitioner. They're usually pretty forthright about what they can do and what they can't do, because they don't want you to be disappointed and they don't want to mislead you. I asked the hands-on healer that I had used to eliminate a parasite if she could get rid of the Lyme spirochete, because I had so many friends that were suffering from Lyme disease. And she said, unfortunately, no. She hadn't been able to do that yet. But there is the 60-year-old Hippocrates Health Institute that I visited in January of this year. They have quite a bit of success eliminating Lyme disease, even long-standing Lyme, with a specific protocol that they use. And I imagine it's relatively complex, but it's not, I don't know what it is. I just know that they do have some success with it. So, and so my point in that is, if you don't find someone immediately who says they can, keep looking, because lots of times we all have different knowledge and we all have different expertise. And so you may find one who doesn't know how to do it or hasn't been able to do it so far, but then you may find someone else who's taken a different approach that proves effective. So the best thing is to start searching, ask practitioners before you make an appointment to see them, and they'll usually be very forthright about it. I also use the internet frequently to do research. I help people find practitioners all over the world, and so it's a wonderful device. I found help for people in India and in the Philippines and in places that I never expected a phone call from, in Turkey, and I found a practitioner in Turkey for a person with mental illness. So you have to be careful about who you trust and what sources you trust on the internet. But it is a really wonderful tool, and it's opened the door for communication around the world. I'm on an integrative psychiatric listserv that has 400 members, and they're all over the world. So if somebody in India or someone in Canada or someone in the United States has a question that they haven't been able to find the answer, they can put it out to this international network. And sometimes Ayurvedic medicine, which is Indian medicine, or...
Could you explain that? A lot of people have asked me what that is.
That is the term, the word that's used, and I don't really know what it means, for the medicine that is commonly used in India. And it is holistic, and it is scientific, but it's based on years of experience in that country before there were drugs available. So this is a very old form of healing, and tried, and has, I'd like to say, clinical trial of millions over centuries. So, so it's very effective. It's taught in the United States. I think Dr. Weil's, the school that he founded in Arizona, probably teaches it as well. And don't allow the fact that conventional medicine tells people that something is incurable to stop you from searching, because the illnesses that often cannot be cured by drugs may be able to be cured by holistic medicine because they work in a different way. The drugs are targeted to suppress a specific symptom, and they may do that very well, but they may not elicit healing. And so holistic, because it addresses causes rather than symptoms, is more likely to figure out the underlying cause of the symptom and be able to eliminate it and then bring about healing. And in the most serious illnesses, the ones that are considered, quotes, incurable, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, lupus, there are books by people, by doctors who have healed themselves of multiple sclerosis and lupus. In Parkinson's disease, there's a lot of reversals that occur, or partial reversals that occur when they detoxify people, because a lot of these, all three of these, have extreme toxic overload. Multiple sclerosis and lupus frequently have mercury overload. Parkinson's tends to be more known that it's related to pesticide exposures and chemical exposures. So you can detox and do a chelation. You can detox to get the chemicals out, and you can do chelation to get metals out. And so it is possible in some cases to reverse those. Depends how long-standing and how much damage they've done. So nobody told me that I could stop the growth of breast cysts and tumors, and that's actually the first thing I did before ending my bipolar. But I intuitively sensed that these growths had started very quickly, and they were growing so rapidly that I had surgery twice in 12 months, and every time they cut them out, more would appear. And so I just thought, there has to be a trigger. Something triggered these. And so I went looking for causes and worked with a naturopathic doctor to do all the things I needed to do. Changed my diet, adopted an anti-inflammatory diet because inflammation contributes to not just arthritis but cancer. And I detoxed, and I started eating really clean foods, and I got rid of a lot of allergies, and I did everything I could, and I totally eliminated chemicals from my life, my house, my yard. I didn't garden with pesticides anyhow because I grew up on a farm and I knew that manure was better and safer actually. But and so it took me 2 years to stop the growths. But that process made me realize, gee, if I can stop these rapidly growing cysts and tumors, maybe I can halt my bipolar mood swings. And so I started a search. I gave myself 2 years to figure that out, and it actually took me that long. But now, knowing what I know, and with the information so much more available today, and so many doctors being aware of it, you can have dramatic changes in mental illness within 6 to 12 to 18 months, and sometimes complete reversal. So just because conventional medicine said it can't be healed doesn't necessarily mean it's so. That's why we call this alternative medicine, and why I advocate its use first before you go to drugs.
I've had a lot of people question how I can handle all the different things I can't eat. Mm-hmm. And I basically just say, I don't feel good if I eat them.
And that's true. And you know how I did it, because I dramatically changed my diet overnight because I felt that I needed to if I was fighting these growths. I felt like I was working on a clock here. If I didn't do this quickly,
you were.
One of them would be malignant. And so when I was tempted to feel sorry for myself because I couldn't eat what the rest of the world is eating, and had to avoid so many things, and it was hard at the beginning, I just would stop and say, do you want to do this or do you want cancer? And that sort of helped me clarify my my priorities. And I said, no, I don't want to deal with cancer. No. I want to be well, and that's where I'm headed. So that same question, if I start whining internally, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm tired of taking all these supplements, I don't want to be so healthy, it's a pain, I just say, okay, do you want to be sick? Do you want to feel tired, lousy, or do you want to heal and have the energy that I have and be able to do everything that I can do today that I would not have attempted to accomplish years ago. So
Well, I'm glad you got well because of what you can give to other people with your knowledge.
thank you. I am too. I'm happy to
Yes,
share.
your first 2 books were very, very helpful.
Thanks.
What is botanical medicine?
Well, it's the use of herbs and plants for healing purposes. It comes from botany, of course. And I have a real soft spot for using herbs because I once owned an organic medicinal herbal tea business. And I ran that for 7 years. And I just distributed the teas locally. And then when I was, at the time, when I was running it, I was still bipolar, and when I ended the bipolar symptoms, I couldn't write the book that I wanted to write about that and run this little business. And so I decided there were a gazillion herbal teas out there. I could close the business and the world wouldn't probably stop whirling. But there was a greater need for a book on ending bipolar holistically. And so I went in that direction. But the teas that I sold, I'm going to tell you the names because we had fun naming them. One was Cold Begone, Immune Tune, Brain Friend, Digestive Calm, and Women's Rights, RITES.
I love that.
And they worked really well. And so that was that. I still use those teas. I still make them. And my naturopathic doctor, all naturopaths are trained in using botanical medicine as well. So when I went to her and I was feeling stressed and I was tired all the time and describing my life, she said, well, you've been under stress for a lot of years. And so you've burned out your adrenal glands, and you really need to do things that will nourish and help them heal and restore. And so she told me, take licorice root, ashwagandha root, which was in some of my teas, both of those, Siberian ginseng, skullcap, which I wasn't familiar with, and tulsi, holy basil, and rhodiola, which I had not heard about. And blend them all together and make a tea and drink 1 cup of that tea a day. And so I did that and for about a year, and it really did make a difference. My energy started to come back, and I also worked on reducing my stress levels just a bit here and there, as much as I could. So herbs have been medicine for centuries. They are very safe. You can make mistakes with them, so I encourage people to study about herbs if you plan to use them medicinally, get direction from a trained practitioner, or become very informed about it. And but they're inexpensive and easy to use, and they work.
How does a holistic approach to menopause differ from mainstream medicine?
Well, I always feel like doctors see menopause as an illness. And it's really not. It's a natural process in life. It's a process from which you go from the years of being able to conceive to the years where you don't have to worry about that anymore. And hopefully you have all the children that you want and grandchildren, and you're enjoying your extended family. But those symptoms of menopause are due to the hormones getting imbalanced as the levels diminish. So some of them get out of balance with the other ones, and all of them diminish. Even in men, hormone production at the age of 75 is 10% of what it is at the age of 20. So part of the aging process is the reduction of hormones produced in the body in both sexes. So menopause is just part of that, and women talk about it more. Men never mention these kinds of things. My Women's Rights tea had a wide variety of herbs that are known to balance hormones, and I just wanted to mention a few of them. Had chaste tree berries, raspberry leaves that have long been used for women's pain, black cohosh, Jamaican sarsaparilla, Siberian ginseng again, and dong quai root. And I drank 1 cup a day and I breezed through menopause. I really didn't have any serious, the hot flashes disappeared, and I was able to sleep, and so I recommend herbs for that passage.
I went through the opposite experience, and I wanted to ask you, are there natural forms of progesterone and estrogen?
There are biocompatible forms of them. What they're derived from, I don't know, because every time I mention using hormones to my naturopathic doctor, because I am high in testosterone, and so I wanted to inquire about using the more safe forms of estrogen to perhaps balance the testosterone. And she really doesn't want me to go there. And so I trust her judgment. I continue to look. But in terms of progesterone, I'm interested in that too, because it has this, I've read some research that it stops these little red dots that I have all over my body that are actually cherry hemangiomas, and where blood vessels come to the surface of the skin, and I have hundreds of them. So there was some research that said that progesterone might help stop those growths. So I'm still looking into it, but there are natural forms of hormones. You just have to be sure that that's what you're getting.
What would you use to fight a cold? Your tea.
My tea. I still use it. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the herbs in that. Cold Be Gone tea worked really quickly. If you had a stuffy head and nose and your sinuses were getting clogged and you were feeling really like you were coming down with something, people would drink 1 cup of it and their sinuses would clear, and they'd say, oh my God, this is amazing. And so it sold really well, but I just couldn't take it to the business to the next level. I had other priorities. And so I still make this blend for personal use, and I carry it when I travel because it has so many healing properties, and that it stops whatever I start to come down with really quickly. Within a day or two, it's gone, and I never really get sick. So I might go back. I own the business still, and I have all the blends. I may go back there when my life calms down a little bit, if that ever happens.
I can maybe help you out.
Anyhow, it was the most complex of the tea blends that we made, and it had 19 different herbs. And the ones that I was less familiar with was Oregon grapefruit, which was really remarkable, and Paul de Arco inner bark, and yarrow flowers. And then the ones that I did, these are not the whole 19, but some of them. Astragalus root was really a good immune booster, and ginger root as well, and licorice root. All of those are well known as immune boosting and beneficial herbs. But you notice some of these, you use flowers or leaves or some the root, and so you need to be sure of, they have different properties and different benefits, so you need to be sure which part you're supposed to use. The other thing that I do, that anybody can do when I start to come down with something, is I get a clove of garlic. I take, the bunch of garlic. I take 5 or 6 cloves. I slice them thinly. I put them in some olive oil, start to saute them a little bit, put some broccoli spears in there, to a tablespoon of water, put a lid on it, and let the broccoli cook for about 5 minutes. Broccoli has amazing beneficial healing properties. Garlic is an antimicrobial, anti-everything, maybe anti-friend if you eat too much of it too. But it's an amazing healing thing. So you can do that. The other way, if you're not real fond of garlic, you can chop it up and put garlic and onions in chicken broth and make a chicken vegetable soup. Or, because chicken broth, they've learned why everybody used to say, oh, you have to eat chicken soup if you have a cold, is that it really does help drain the mucus and keep your systems moving to drain things so it doesn't clog up. And garlic and onions have sulfur in them, and sulfur is really important for healing. So that plant family is leeks, garlics, onions, chives, can be used when you're trying to fight off something.
When we were in Spain, my husband had a really high fever, and he ordered something to eat that was almost all garlic. He sweated it off. He was fine the next day.
Yeah, it can.
It really works
is
fast.
And it's potent. I used to. You can buy garlic in a bottle that's aged Kyloic, Kyloic, and so you can have it on. And aged garlic seems to be, studies show, is more beneficial than the raw garlic even. So my cat used to get something like, it was like a ringworm around his ear. I'd put a couple of drops of garlic in his food for a day or a week, and that would stop. It would go away. So, and he didn't seem to mind. I mean, cats can smell, and garlic's pretty stinky. I thought he'd have a problem with it, but I guess he's eaten worse. Like a dead mouse.
And garlic tablets aren't the way to go, is it?
Well, I've never tried them because I just use the raw garlic usually because I cook with it. I like to cook and I always have it on hand. And so I just use that. But for the cat, I felt that the garlic drops were easier and you can keep them in the refrigerator. So it's a different form that was easier to get it into cat food.
Definitely. Do you welcome patients who do not vaccinate or delay vaccinations on an alternative schedule?
Well, this question came from someone who really doesn't understand that I'm not a medical practitioner, so I don't treat patients. What I do is I advocate for patients, I advocate and make people raise awareness of holistic medicine, and I explain how to use it, and I try to help educate people. But when I have clients that come to me, I do consulting, but I'm not treating them. I'm listening to their symptoms, I'm listening to what's going on in their family and in their life, I'm listening to all the things that they're saying are wrong, and then I'm sussing out what type of practitioner I should refer them to, what would be most likely to help them. And so I give them advice, I give them direction. In some cases, some states are really hard to find holistic practitioners in Alabama and Oklahoma. But so I try to help them find someone that practices near home that has the training and the credentials to help them. So that's my role, is as an advocate and an educator. I am not a practitioner, and so I want all of you to know that out there.
Do you get flu shots?
No, absolutely not. And here's why. Once that I learned mercury was used as a preservative in vaccines, I stopped completely.
I never knew that.
Most people don't know.
No.
Of course, the pharmaceutical industry doesn't necessarily make this information public. They don't put it on those little ads after they advertise a drug saying all the things that might go wrong with you. And oh, by the way, you might get mercury overload from the fillings in your teeth and combined with the vaccinations, the lifetime of vaccinations that you've had. So the form of mercury that's used in vaccines is called thimerosal. So even if you read the label and it was on the label, most people wouldn't know what that is. So, but here's what happened. The FDA changed the rules so vaccine manufacturers do not have to include thimerosal on the label as an ingredient unless it is used as a preservative. So if thimerosal is used in the manufacturing process, but not used as a preservative, the vaccine can be labeled thimerosal free. And so this is how the FDA colludes with the pharmaceutical industry to keep consumers in the dark about what's in what they're taking. And I resent this because the FDA is funded by taxpayer dollars. I think they need to represent the taxpayers and not put commercial interest ahead of patients. So I'm sort of stringent and irate about this kind of a thing, and and even more so when there are still there were many mothers of autistic children who said their child was absolutely normal and healthy until they were given all of these childhood vaccines. And it's now up to, I think it's something like over 30 in the first 2 years of their life.
I was going to say that because
And
it
it's
wasn't that
insane.
before.
Nobody needs these. They're giving them vaccines for things they might get when they're 16-year-olds. So it's the pharmaceutical industry not being regulated properly by the government. So rather than listen to me rant, let me tell you what you can do instead of
Yes.
having a vaccine.
Because I was getting ready to rant with you about pharma.
If you know, what I use is I use the mineral selenium. And selenium is a natural mineral. It's found in soils. It used to be that plants that were grown in these soils, when you ate them, you could get adequate amounts of selenium through your diet. But it's not in all soils across the country. So if you were just growing your soil in your own backyard for your garden, which 30 years ago people did, you might not be getting enough selenium. And why it's important, it is a very potent antiviral and antibiotic type of thing. And so it's used in treating AIDS patients. There's quite a bit of research on its use with AIDS patients. And I recently read during the Ebola outbreaks that it was being used for Ebola as well. I don't have the science on that, but I was reading that in the papers. My daily multivitamin and mineral that I get through my naturopathic doctor has 200 milligrams of selenium in it. So I'm getting, not milligrams, sorry, and I need to make this point, 200 micrograms, which is mcg instead of mg. And because selenium is a mineral, and minerals and metals, your body needs certain ones for health, but the body stores them. So they can build up in your system. So you need to make sure that it's micrograms, mcg. 200 is the daily dose that is felt to be safe. I also buy selenium capsules in 200 micrograms in the capsules, and they're readily available in drugstores on the shelf, over the counter, and in health food stores. And I carry some of those when I travel, because when you're on a plane in this enclosed environment where they no longer filter the air adequately, more of my friends who've done international travel have come down with horrible viruses as a result of plane trips. So I just take one after I get off the plane and maybe one later that day to just bump up that level temporarily and make sure that I'm protected. And the other thing that, what was the other thing that I do? Oh, when I go to parties in the wintertime, I always take one after a party, because so many people want to go to the party and they may have the sniffles or they may have a headache and not feel really good, but they don't want to stay home. So they go out and they share their germs with all of us.
How kind.
Who are partying. So this is how I use selenium. I take a small amount daily that's safe to be taken daily, and I carry extras when I know, and add a capsule or two for a day or two when I know I've been exposed to a lot of potential viruses.
And for your audience who might not know,
Micrograms.
or lower
Yes.
than
Milligrams is like 1,000 milligrams, or 1 milligram is 1,000 micrograms. So it's the step down, and so it's much less. Thank you for clarifying that.
What are nutraceuticals?
Nutraceuticals was a term that was created in 1989, and it combines the words nutrients with pharmaceutical. So it refers to natural products that have a significant health benefit. But here's the catch. It doesn't have any legal meaning. So people can use it for marketing and sales purposes and not have to have any scientific proof that it does improve your health. So you need to be cautious about some claims that nutraceuticals I have, because you just want to ask where's the research, and see if it's on their website, see if there's some available, see how they respond. Because it can sound good and maybe it works, but you really want to know before you spend your money. So.
And how many people should be in a clinical trial or in the statistics?
Well, typically they'll test something first on a very small group. First, they test it in animals. I mean, almost always. And then they'll test it on maybe 5 to 10 volunteers. And if that shows benefits, then they maybe will spend the money to take it up and do a clinical trial of 100, or sometimes if it's a big, important thing and the federal government's involved, then they'll do 300 or 3,000 people, depends on what they're looking at. So, but when I'm evaluating research, I really only use trials where it's been humans and it's been 100 people or more usually. You just need to have a broader look rather than such a small sampling. We skipped one about what is health and wellness coaching.
I probably put it on the wrong card.
Okay, well.
What is health and wellness coaching?
All right. These are practitioners who are helping people change their diets and lifestyle. And they used to be called dietitians, but the conventionally trained dietitians really don't know much about health and wellness. And so those who have taken more recent training programs like to call themselves a health and wellness coach, because they're doing dietary counseling to improve health, not for weight loss or other reasons that people used to use it. So practitioners who use these terms may have degrees, or they may be certified by a particular institute. I just wanted to talk about one that I respect, and because of the rigorous program that they offer. And I've known practitioners who went through it, and they were more knowledgeable than anybody else that I talked to in that dietetics field when it came to health. And that's the Academy of Healing Nutrition in New York City. It's a 9-month certificate training program, and it's obtained using monthly weekend classes, so people who are working can get this certification. And they learn about whole organic foods and why that's important, about the cleansing properties of sea vegetables, about healing herbs, immune-enhancing probiotics, which MDs don't usually use probiotics, but they really should be. It's just that they were trained by the drug industry. And so they know antibiotics, but nobody said, hey, when you kill all the bacteria in the gut, you really need to put in the good ones so that you digest things better. They learn about home remedies and healing tonics, things that you can do safely, and wellness techniques to improve body, mind, and spirit. So it is looking at the whole, and it's addressing the whole to keep the systems in balance and functioning, but from a very strong nutritional standpoint. And these foods, why it's so important is foods give you more energy. Different foods can help lift your mood. They can improve your digestion because of what's in the food. A small example is yogurt that has probiotics in it, or it has bacteria in it. And sauerkraut, things that are homemade and fermented that add to your gut the diversity of bacteria in the gut that aids digestion. The foods that you eat can have you have better sex, more youthful vitality. They can help you lose weight without necessarily cutting calories, but just changing what you're eating. And you can rebuild bone and muscle mass. You can change your blood pressure.
You can get taller.
You can get taller. Tell them how you got taller.
My chiropractor.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I lost 2 inches. I was 5 foot my whole life, and lost 2 inches because of my back. And I have scoliosis. My mother had the Dowager's hump.
Okay.
And I've been seeing a wonderful chiropractor. And what I appreciate is the fact that she doesn't make you come in every week. As
Right.
soon as you start to heal, the sessions, are
Yeah.
cut in half. But since I've been seeing her, I'm 5 feet again.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
I
too.
believe in chiropractic.
Okay, so after this, we go on to
Modalities.
Yes. Okay, ask the question.
What healing modalities do you use, and what did you use for you, as opposed to what you might
Okay,
recommend?
I'm going to consult my notes because you realize that I've used a lot over 17 years, and so I don't want to leave out something that might be important to someone. So I'm just going to keep this little checklist here. But at the beginning, when I was aware that conventional medicine didn't have any, the doctors that I consulted, who are still my doctors, but they were an MD and my gynecologist, when I said, what can I do to stop these growths? He looked at me and he said, well, we don't swing into action until one of them is malignant. And I said, well, that doesn't sound like a great plan, to wait for cancer to happen before you address it. I'm really prefer to try prevention. So that's when I consulted a naturopathic doctor who said, oh yes, we can help you change the systems in your body that will be less friendly toward cancer replication. And so I used a naturopathic doctor, and I still use the same one as my primary care physician 17 years later. I used a chiropractor when I needed one, and I've had the same one for 20 years. When I was working to end my bipolar mood swings, I had gone to the clinic that ended my mania, but they didn't know what was causing my depression. And then I had 15 months of solid depression, and that was really hard. And so I went to a hands-on healer because it made sense to me that that if I had mood swings that had been depressive lows and manic highs, that balancing, energy balancing, would perhaps somehow bring me out of the depression and bring me into a better balance. So I went once a week for 6 months, and whenever I left, I felt wonderful. And she cleared energy blockages and opened the channels and said, finally she said, your energy is flowing beautifully, but I don't know why it's not sticking, why it doesn't stay that way, why it's still, you still are coming back every week. And that's when I learned about the fish oils being essential for brain, and the research that came out of Harvard showing that in bipolar patients. And so I had some in the refrigerator because they're anti-inflammatory. So I took them, and I decided the trials showed that in the trials they used 10,000 milligrams. The doctor who wrote the book and did the trials said probably 3,000 to 5,000 milligrams a day would be adequate for most people. So I started taking 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day, one with each meal. And within 48 hours, my depression lifted. And I went in for my routine appointment and didn't say anything to the healer. And she touched my arm and she said, what are you doing differently? She could feel the difference in the energy. And so I explained to her. So these are essential fats, and they're very needed. So I've used hands-on healing for many other occasions, and it does work, but sometimes you need essential things in your system to allow the system to function. And then once a year I do lymphatic drainage.
What is that?
We have a lymph system. You know about the lymph nodes in your body, and what the lymph system is sort of the drainage system for when the body is throwing off toxins. They go into the lymph system and they're drained. They're processed and drained through the lymph system, and that's excreted. But these little lymph tubules, some of them are very small in certain parts of your body. And so if you have things like metals or if you have large molecules that might be, say, a pesticide or some other plastic molecule from plastics or something like that, they might be too large and not go through the lymph tubules that easily. And so I go and have lymphatic drainage that uses a mechanism that's waves that that they run over my body that penetrates and pulses and breaks down those molecules so that they can flow through the small tubules. And this is, you can do manual lymphatic drainage through massage, but I prefer the mechanized form that this practitioner, whose name is Bonnie Tetro, uses. And when that happens, the first time I had it done, Bonnie came and spoke at one of the seminars that I was sponsoring. And when I learned about it, I immediately made an appointment with her. And she said, "Have you ever had this done before?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, you're going to feel like, after you leave here, you're going to feel like you're coming down with the flu, but you're not. This is just your body doing a lot of drainage." And so she said, drink lots of water for the next 24 hours. Just go home, lay down, rest, sleep as much as you can, and by the next morning you'll be fine. And that's exactly what happened. On the way home, I had made an appointment to stop and see a practitioner, and I actually was feeling so foggy-brained that I phoned the practitioner and said, "I'm very sorry, I didn't realize this would happen, and I cannot come and talk to you because I can't think clearly." So I went home, and the next morning I was fine. It was like nothing had happened. So now I do it once a year, just so I don't have that huge buildup. But I do recommend it for people, especially people who are sick. You can have years of clogged stuff in your system if you've never gone through this process. I use homeopathic remedies. For instance, for poison ivy, I'm highly allergic to it, but there's a homeopathic remedy I can buy for $7 a bottle in the health food store, and you can take it for prevention, or you can take it after you've been exposed, and it works great. I drink herbal teas and herbal tinctures, of course. I have used acupressure, which I'll talk about later, to turn off certain allergies. And I have had massage occasionally just because it feels so good, but I wasn't doing it for therapeutic purposes. I was doing it for the luxury of doing it. This year I tried LED light therapy, and that was very interesting, and at some point I'll talk more about that. But it's basically, you have LED lights. Oh my goodness, we've only got 5 minutes. Okay, you have LED lights in a pad that are run by a control device, and they're infrared, and they can penetrate the skin at different levels, and they have very therapeutic properties. And so I rented them for 2 weeks and experimented with them, and then ran out of time, and so I had to send them back, and I haven't gotten back to it yet, but I'm going to, and I'll let you know when I know more. And then I also did sound and frequency treatments with a practitioner to, again, see what I could perceive. I like to try things when I come across something that I think is intriguing, and I think that the science is pretty good on it. I like to try it on myself before I recommend it widely, just to see how I feel. Okay, we have 5 minutes, so let's take the next question, and
Let's see if this question is something you can answer in 5 minutes.
okay.
What are your spiritual beliefs?
Well, I can probably do that for 5 minutes, but maybe I don't want to. Maybe people don't want to hear that much, more than you want to know. Anyhow, I was raised a Christian, and I credit that religion, that form of religion, with teaching me what's right and what's wrong, and giving me an ethical platform. So I know I have a real sense of what one should do and what one shouldn't do. And I don't know that if people actually know that unless they're taught it at some point in some way. So I call that my internal compass, and I check in with myself now and then on whether I'm following it or not. I was raised in a very religious household, and as I matured, I began to not agree with some of the things that I was taught. and see that it didn't make sense to me. So it was my own intellectual questioning that happens sometimes as you start to grow up. And so I don't continue the practice, the religion in which I was raised, but I basically felt that I had this solid grounding in that I feel that very strongly, and I sense that there's a higher power. And so I believe in that, but I don't call it the conventional terms, because I think that a lot of the things that divide religions are some of these details that are human details that I think an almighty God would find rather petty. And so what I try to do is avoid the dogma of any particular religion and just adopt a philosophy of living. And my philosophy is that I try to be honest and treat others with love and compassion and kindness. And I think that working from a place of love reflects whatever beneficial energy you call the universe, whether it's God, whether it's Yahweh, whether it's Jehovah, whether it's Allah, or dozens of names for the divine forms of divinity. I just believe that it's important to follow this instinct and treat everyone with great compassion. And so I do unto others as I would have them do unto me. And if there is a God or an energy that judges, which I'm not sure there is, but if there is, I think that we will be judged by how we treat others and how our actions, not by what day we go to church or how many times a day we pray or what direction we're facing. I think those are man-made concerns that probably aren't universal concerns.
Do we have time for another?
We don't have time for the antibiotics. Let's just see. There's another one. Okay, there was a question out of left field that was...
Oh, the circumcision?
Yes. Let's do that one right here.
Okay.
Because we both said, what?
Okay.
Here it is.
It's parts. What percentage of your patients are circumcised?
And I just burst out laughing because it was so surprising to me. First of all, I'm not a practitioner. And second of all, this is not something that I've ever even thought about in conjunction with holistic medicine. So this wasn't first on my list of things to think about or talk about, but I do want to answer this question. So I did a quick internet search, and here's what came up. In 2005, roughly 56% of male newborns were circumcised prior to release from the hospital, according to the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. Data from a national survey from 1999 to 2002 found the prevalence of males circumcised in the U.S. was 79%. So with that, we're going to end and say, please come and join us next week. We have more questions about holistic healing, and that came from many of you, and we're delighted that you're finding this interesting enough to tune in every week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you, Lois.
Thank you, Grace.
Good night.